everyone. Welcome to another podcast where I'm hosting today Tommy from XUND AI. And Tommy, thank you for being a guest and really looking forward to this session where we decipher further in the healthcare space, especially the waves that XUND.ai is making with the way you guys are solving the healthcare puzzle, a big piece of the healthcare puzzle, I must say. So, Tommy, why not you tell a bit more about XUND.ai and what it does in your own words?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's great to be on the podcast. As you've mentioned, we're active in the healthcare space, and the problem we have ventured out to solve is the growing mismatch between the demand for human resources from the patient side that's pressuring the healthcare system. As you know, we as patients are getting more and more, globally speaking. We're getting older, but we're not necessarily getting healthier at the end of our lives. So we require more and more resources per person from the healthcare system over our lifespan. At the same time, if you look at the number of doctors and nurses, the numbers are maybe growing at a slow rate, but they are not enough to catch up to the big demand that's coming from the patient side. So there's a growing gap between this supply and demand. And what it leads to is that there's less and less time a doctor can spend per patient. And this is a real problem because it puts pressure on the healthcare staff, but it also means that the quality of care that can be delivered to patients is decreasing. So we have ventured out to solve this problem, and the solution we have identified is to automate interactions between healthcare providers and the patients in order to free up capacities on the side of doctors and nurses so they can spend their time with those interactions that really make a difference, that really create value for the patients. And with this vision in mind, we have created XUND, which is a software as a service product that we offer to healthcare companies such as insurers, hospitals, pharma companies, telemedicine providers, basically anyone who interacts with the patient. And we allow them to do this in a fully automated, no human in the loop way. They can run symptom assessments, they can run specific risk assessments for over 600 diseases, and soon they will also be able to run preventive interactions where they can calculate the risk of a certain patient developing illnesses in a certain area for 14 organ groups, and thus decide what is the best preventive measure for the patient to take.
Okay. And so, Tommy, tell us a bit of background, like what got you started on Zund, how did the idea occur to you, and then, like the journey from where it started and where it is today.
So I have personally not too much to do with the healthcare system, or I haven't had too much to do with it in the past. I'm a business student. I studied management in Vienna, in Switzerland, and then went on to work as a consultant for McKinsey. And that's what I've done for almost 3 years after my studies. And then the urge to start a company really just grew and grew until the point where I said, okay, I need to go out of consulting and really try to start a company myself. And I teamed up with a childhood friend of mine, Lucas, who I know since the age of 10. And we basically looked at more than 100 business ideas, ranging a huge variety of topics from food retail or how to digitize cemeteries, really like a number of different things. But eventually we ended up with XUND because we thought this is a project where we can really make a difference. We can create a real vision around it and motivate people to join us and go the extra mile. And I think this has been the right decision. At the same time, we're also a bit naive about the challenges that are ahead of us. I don't think we're fully aware of how difficult it will be to start a company in the healthcare space. But looking back, I'm pretty happy that we didn't see the obstacle that was ahead of us, because probably we wouldn't have started if we'd known how difficult it would be. But looking back, I'm very happy that we did, that we went down this path.
Right. I think sometimes it is better to not have any pre-notion. Sometimes it helps you to look at a problem without being afraid and have the courage to come what
Absolutely.
may. So, in fact, you mentioned about your McKinsey stint. So, in any way, Did the experience at McKinsey help you, like, with the decisions that you took as a startup? Or did you
I
create
mean,
any sort of
obviously,
practices that you learned at McKinsey to succeed?
yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a good school to get into, because you get confronted with very complex, very high level, very challenging situations basically on day one of your job, and the pace is very fast. So you learn how to work, you learn how to work hard, you learn how to handle stress, you learn how to work in a team, you learn how to you know unbundle a big complex problem you're faced with. So these are all very valuable capabilities you can take away from workplace like McKinsey. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything that can really prepare you for the existential threats of going into starting your own company. We have bootstrapped for the first 2 years. We have planned for bootstrapping for maybe 6 to 12 months. So you can imagine how the financial situation of me and my co-founders deteriorated, especially over the second year of that bootstrapping phase. And these were situations or fears which I've never known before. But it teaches you to be creative. It teaches you to achieve a lot with very little. And I can trace back numerous of our competitive advantages that we have today to those times where we really had to make the tough decisions because we only had very limited funds to spend on solving the problem we were facing.
Great. So talking about the challenges, especially you started out, I think, there must have been challenges around the AI and the NLP space. I believe, given the context that now probably with OpenAI, companies have just started a all new approach and probably things seem a bit more solvable. So, how did you approach the AI and NLP piece of your solution?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we are a medical device, so it means we are certified by authorized bodies of the European Union, hopefully also soon by the FDA, and it means that we have quite limited possibilities to use any black box large language models in our product, and we also don't use those kind of models. Our medical device is explainable, it's straightforward, the results are replicatable, and we always know why the algorithm does what it does. However, in the research phase of creating that product, especially building the medical database which is behind that product, we employ our own NLP models that mine millions of publications and extract the hidden knowledge that's stored in those unstructured data sources, and we use it as an input factor for building our product. Now, we have started to do this mainly because we didn't have the money to employ doctors. If you look at some of the competitors we have on the market, most of them have started off 5, 6, 7 years earlier than we did, and most of them have started off with significantly more money than we did. One of our biggest competitors has they've raised a 20 million euro angel round. So basically, from day one, they were flooded with cash. We still haven't raised even close to that sum over the last 5 years. And what they did was to go out and hire an army of doctors and basically tell them, okay, go read the papers out there and build the medical knowledge base we need to run our product. And if I have had 20 million in the beginning, I probably would have done the same. I would have just employed dozens and dozens of doctors and told them, okay, now you go and read and distill, and then we're gonna have a good medical database in the end. Now, as we didn't have the money to do that, we instead had to become creative, and we teamed up with the Technical University of Vienna, with Professor Hambury, and we're looking at ways how to replicate this human in the research process. And what we came up with is a tool that we today call Disco. Disco is our in-house NLP tool that helps us to understand the unstructured publications in sources like PubMed Central, or from millions of discharge reports we have access through our different partnerships, and we use those data points to build the knowledge base in a fully automated way behind our product. And this means that we can achieve what our competitors can and even more with a significantly smaller medical team and at a much faster pace than any of our competitors.
Great, great. That's a typical David versus Goliath kind of story that you've been building then. Nice.
Yes.
So, one of the stories or one of the problems I've always heard with healthcare founders is finding their first customers or validating, because healthcare in itself nobody wants to try basically. So, walk us through your story of landing with your first customers. How did you decide for that part?
Mm. Yes, I told you in the beginning that the original problem we identified was this growing gap between the supply and demand in the healthcare space. And we have actually gone through a number of business models to solve this problem, and we've iterated our way to an actually functioning business model where we can also make money, which is a prerequisite to building a successful company. So we started off first with the idea of building a telemedical consultation service. So just taking some doctors, sitting them in front of a computer, and then selling those consultations to the patients directly. We have pivoted away from that more or less after a month or two of founding because we've realized it will be very inefficient. We'll have to take a lot of doctors out of the system, so we'll actually not solve the problem, but maybe even make it worse. And thus we said, okay, let's rather focus on a B2C approach and build an app that kind of acts like a GP that the patient always has in their pockets, and they can just reach out and ask a question when they're faced with a medical problem, and this super app will reply to them. And we've actually built this app and we've launched it. And again, after a month or so, we realized it's a cash burning machine because we completely underestimated the customer acquisition costs we're going to have with the product. And we have massively overestimated the willingness to pay of patients for such a service. And back then we maybe had 4 or 5 months of runway left in our company. So we said, okay, if we just continue like this, we gotta go bankrupt and we have to close down the shop. So we pivoted again, and this was at the end of 2020, early 2021. And we said, okay, this doesn't work, so we have to turn to a B2B approach because B2B companies in the healthcare space, they already have the relationship to the patient, so they don't have to invest as much as we as a young company have into customer acquisition. So they can immediately benefit from the more efficient interactions between them and their patients. And we took the backend out of our B2C product and turned it into a B2B product. And with this, we closed our first B2B customer, which was the Vienna Insurance Group in Austria, to whom we actually tried to sell our app previously for almost a year, but they said, hey, look, we already have our own app. We don't want to add another app, another platform to our solution base. But once we approached them with our B2B product, which can be plugged into the backend of their solutions, because it's the API that is certified as a medical device. So it's a real game changer for building your own solutions in the healthcare space. They basically converted within a few months, which is super fast. If you exclude the 1 year plus of time us trying to sell them our app, if you add that time, you're probably more close to the actual sales cycle which we're facing in our industry. Typically, it takes us a year, maybe a year and a half to convert a big B2B customer. It's a very slow process. It's a very cumbersome process. There's very little a small startup like us can do to speed it up because it's often just, internal decision making. People are swapped out. So it's a pain. It's a pain. It's not easy to sell in healthcare. But the good thing is once you actually make the transaction, the products tend to be quite sticky. So as hard as it is to get in, it's pretty easy if you're doing a good job to also stay attached to those customers. So the switching costs are high.
Great. And why we all are in healthcare, just like you said, that you eventually want to make lives better, impact lives. So, what has been some of the success stories of your end users then once this solution was implemented with your customers? Like, when it reached the end users to these channels, or any kind of your favorite stories again, that this is how it held, or this is how it worked for someone beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, we have a very personal story here. It's actually the wife of my co-founder Lucas, who was suffering from recurrent abdominal pain, and the doctors really couldn't help her. And eventually they interacted with XUND, and the algorithm suggested that they should do a specific assessment because the symptoms point towards a stomach ulcer. And eventually, through this guidance of XUND, she went to the right specialist, and they confirmed the diagnosis, and she received treatment, and it really tremendously helped her to improve the quality of life. Um, we have you know a bunch of customer stories through our integrations that tell the same story. People suffering from symptoms which they don't understand, the classic healthcare system not having sufficient resources to go in depth on their case, and thus them feeling lost and not being able to get a real solution to their problem. And then they interact with an algorithm that we provide, and that algorithm has the capacity, has the time, can ask all the long questions and dig deep into the case and really understand what's going on with the patient, and then point them towards the right direction so that they can receive the right treatment fast enough. And I think this is something that motivates me as a founder, that motivates our team to really keep on working and trying to push the boundaries of what's possible, reach as many patients as possible, and really try to help our end customers to find the treatment pathway that's best for them.
Great. How many lives have been impacted by Zoom today? Like how many customers, end users, if you
And
could
that's
say?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. I mean, through our various integrations, today around 3.5 million patients have access to our products. So yeah, it's growing, and I hope it's going to be much more. And so far, we've been mainly limited to Europe, but now we've just recently launched our first integration in Africa as well, with a local telemedicine provider who's using our technology to pre-qualify patients before they get connected to the doctor, and also to provide them guidance outside of office hours of the doctors. So in the middle of the night on a Sunday when no doctor is on duty. So we hope to be able to reach more and more patients and to impact as many lives as possible in a positive way.
Right. So, Tommy, how is it building in Austria? Because, to most of us, we all know Austria for the beautiful sceneries, but not much aware of the startup scene or the support and other things about Austria. If you want to share some lessons on that one.
Yeah, I mean, so we're based in Vienna, and I'm pretty sure this is a list which we at least pay more attention to than the average person globally. But the Economist is regularly publishing most livable cities, and I think over the last 20 years, Vienna has been on top of the list probably like 15 times. So it's a great place to live, and with this, it's also a great place to attract talent to, because the city itself has a lot to offer. Um, at the same time, Vienna is also located at a very interesting place within Europe, because it's still considered to be a very Western European country, very wealthy, very clean, very safe. But today I'm calling in from Budapest, which is often considered Eastern Europe, and it took me a 2-hour train ride to get here this morning. So it's a great spot where you can attract a lot of talent from Eastern Europe, and offer them the Western European lifestyle and quality of living. And this makes it a really good place to start a business. Mm. Now, obviously, it's not a perfect place. Otherwise, you've most likely would have heard of much more companies coming out of Austria than you do. We do have some issues when it comes to VC money. There is quite vibrant angel investor scene in Austria if you need a few €100,000 to get your business started. the chances are quite high you're gonna find the right investor locally. The country also has a very strong public subsidiary system. So especially if you're in a research heavy industry, you can get quite substantial amounts from the state to help you bridge some funding gaps or get you off the ground. But if you want to raise a few million, if you want to raise a few dozen millions and really build a big business, Austria is not the right place for you, at least not to look for money. So also for us, we've raised a €6 million seed round in the second half of last year, and we had to go out and look for investors in the UK and the US to fund our business because, yeah, Austria is just probably a bit more risk averse in general than your average UK or US investor, and whenever they see sums of 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, they typically tend to back away and refocus on the earlier stage investments. But all in all, I'm really happy that we started a company in Vienna. I would love if we could really build a globally leading company and still remain based in Vienna. But we'll see what the future holds for us in terms of locating the business.
Great, great. I say amen that good things should happen. Yeah. Great. So, Tommy, while you hustle your way, building a bootstrap startup and then getting seed funded and so on. So, what are some of the lessons that you'd like to share that come on the top of your mind with early stage healthcare founders if they were to start today?
Hmm. Yeah, I always use the acronym of you have to have a positive PCR test to become successful as a founder in general, but especially as a healthcare founder. So PCR here, has nothing to do with COVID. So first of all, you have to be prepared. You have to really dig into the matter and understand the complexities of the industry you're heading into. Um, I wish we were a bit better prepared when we started. I think it would have helped us to be even faster, even more efficient in finding the right business model and in finding the right spot for XUND within the industry. Then you have to be committed because it's yeah, it's more than a full-time job. It's probably 2 or 3 full-time jobs. So I know there's some people out there who say it's great to start as a side hustle, and once you're you know you know that it's the right thing, then you go in and invest all of your time into building your business. I disagree with that. I would always argue, maybe work a bit longer in your regular job and put aside a bit more money before you jump into starting your company. But then, do it intensively. Don't do it on the side. Go in, invest your time, your resources, try to make it work, and also be prepared to call it a day when you realize, okay, it's not going anywhere. So instead of making it a long, painful, slow process, I would always advocate for making it intense and fast and deciding on, is this the right thing for me or not, in a short way. And then last but not least, you have to be resilient, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be probably much harder than you've ever imagined. Your personal life, your professional life, your friendships, everything's going to suffer, and it's going to be a rough ride. But at the same time, I have to say, even though it's probably the toughest time of my life in terms of the professional side, it's also been by far the most rewarding, and I wouldn't change it for anything. Like all the pain we went through, all the anxiety, the tears, the suffering, it just pays off so much, and I've learned so much, and I always consider myself to have the best job in the world, and there's really at the moment nothing you could offer me as an alternative job where I would say, all right, I'm going to quit here and I'm going to take that opportunity.
Great. So, what are some of your habits that keep you sane, while as a busy entrepreneur? Any productivity hacks or, again, any things to balance out that you do?
Hmm. I mean, disclaimer, I think in order to be a successful startup founder, you have to have a tiny bit of insanity in you. So 100% sane is probably nothing you can achieve. But I do have my routines which help me to stay on the ground. I try to go and work out every morning. So that's my way to start the day. It just gives me a feeling of having achieved something already in the morning when I got out of bed, even though it would have been nice to stay in a bit longer. Went to the gym, so after that I feel energized. I feel I have the power to do all the tasks which are on my to-do list. Um, Another hack which helped me a lot, especially during the tough times, was getting into stoicism. I don't know if you know Ryan Holiday. He's a great author. He's written the book The Daily Stoic, which has been probably one of the most helpful books for me over the last 5 years. I try to read a page of it every night before going to bed. It helps me to reflect on all the good and bad things that have happened throughout the day. It helps me to put them into perspective, to put them into the box of can I change something about it, or is it something where I don't need to waste any of my energy because it's outside of my control. And yeah, that's those are my two routines. So basically, the beginning and the end of my day is pretty fixed, and everything that happens in between, I just go with the flow and try to solve it as it comes.
One problem at a time.
Yes, exactly.
Great. So, Tommy, last question. So, what are some of the goals or milestones that you have set for Zund in the near future, and how do you plan to achieve them?
So whenever I think about goals, I tend to look at it from three perspectives. We have goals for our team, we have goals for our product, and we have goals for the business in general. So when it comes to the team, it's I think nothing is as important as having a good, productive, efficient team in a company like ours. We don't have any hard assets. We don't have machinery. All that we have is the brains and bodies of our team. So we have to keep them motivated. We have to keep them going. We have to make sure they're aligned behind our vision. And especially as you grow, we have grown from 25 to around 50 people over the last 6-7 months, which in absolute terms is not much, but in relative terms it's doubling the company. So we are struggling with making
They double.
communications efficient, making collaboration efficient, etc. So solving those issues, going more into cross-functional teams, making sure that everyone has a clear career pathway and knows what their personal journey with XUND is one of my big goals for achieving this year. I think we're making good progress, but still I'm sure there are many bumps ahead of us on the road. When it comes to the product, it's all about expanding into new areas of the patient journey. So for the first 5 years, we have heavily focused on acute care. So patients who are already having symptoms, who have already developed a disease and need to find the right point of care. We have built really good products for that field. And now we need to go and tackle the phase of the patient's life before and after that. So as I said in the beginning, we will be launching a new interaction type for preventive measures, which will be our health check, and will hopefully be on the market still this year, again as a class 2A medical device. And then once that's done, we will be focusing on using our technology to enable remote patient monitoring. So basically running our interactions repeatedly over time and observing how the case of the patient is developing. And with this, we will basically be able to provide an interaction to any patient in any situation of their life. If they're still healthy, then they can use our health check to make sure that they stay healthy as long as possible. If they have an acute problem, they can use our symptom check, they can use our illness check to detect what could be wrong and where to find the right solution. And if they have already received a diagnosis and are in treatment, our patient monitoring modules will be there to observe their case and make sure that no adverse side effects are popping up, that treatment is actually working, and then hopefully after the treatment is done and the patient has recovered, we can get back into the preventive phase. And last but not least, in terms of the company and the business, we want to expand beyond the boundaries of Europe. I've said we're currently in the phase of receiving FDA approval. We are venturing into new markets in Africa. We're currently in discussions with a number of clients in Asia. Luckily, our product is quite international, so the main limitation that we have is a regulatory one. So we try to identify those markets where we can enter with our existing certifications easily, and see if there are some interesting business opportunities to go into the market and provide value for a new customer group.
Okay, that sounds like a busy vision, a lot of things to do, and but I'm glad
It
to
is.
hear about the FDA news, and yeah, I believe while there are many things to do, I think the way you have synchronized it, I think it's just like happening one thing at a time. So that's always a
We'll
doable
do our
way.
best.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tommy. That brings me to the end of this podcast, but really great learning today, and love the PCR concept that I'll definitely share around with other founders too. Thank you so much, and wish you all the best.
Thanks for having me.